DGen Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? We got the main slate for you for week 13. It's your host, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. And I'm joined by my usual co-host, Mr. Kevin Steele at Fantasy Rat 13. Kev, it's recovery day. We're getting over Turkey Day, the Thanksgiving slate. It was definitely a fun one and a roller coaster ride going into that late game. A lot of people disappointed by Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara's lack of production. I was going to say production, but lack of production really is what it comes down to. We were talking pre-show just about the slate and how you felt, and I think it kind of helps to paint the picture for this main slate, as I think there's a lot of spots that people will feel confident in going to and hitting, but there's always that chance that on any given Sunday, the slate can shape up to be what it is. So Kev, talk to the people real quick before we get into the slate. Just about I think what was important was just the strategy approach that we were taking on Thanksgiving and trying to find ways to be contrarian. And really that was, pay up for the defense as the Saints really attacked there in Atlanta, which was just unbelievable with 4 sacks to end out the game. Something incredible that we haven't seen. But then also, early on in that Bears-Lions game, we had joked on the podcast about you saying that it would be a David Blow week and trying to figure out ways to get him. And it almost looked that way. So talk to the people just about your Thanksgiving and how the slate went for you real quick before we get into this main slate here for Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out it was a weird day, but I mean, I think that's how Thanksgiving always turns out. The Thanksgiving slate, like there were certain players like Kenny Golladay, for example. Nobody had Kenny Golladay. He was like 5% owned in like the main thing or the main slate and stuff like that. And I mean, he immediately popped off with a 75-yard touchdown, and that pretty much knew exactly, okay, well, this is how this day is going to go. Because I mean, he had a great day. I mean, he didn't have a ton of receptions. I think he ended up like 3 for 130 and a touchdown, but that 75-yarder, Blau was fine. But he was somebody that nobody really knew anything about. Like you would have had to have gone back and watched, like dug up his tape for his days at Purdue to know anything about him, because it's not like he was some heralded prospect. And so there was not really a lot to go off of with him. And on the other side, I mean, I think we were right on with the Mitchell Trubisky to Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. Both of them were fine plays. Anthony Miller with 26 DK points, and then A-Rob, with 22. Mitchell Trubisky was the leading quarterback on the slate with 27 DK points. So that really worked out, and that really worked out for us. We all love the Bears defense, and of course that did not work out at all with only 5. But in the second game, Zeke was fine. Like, you didn't have to play him, but he was fine. I think he scored 20. The Bills defense came out and really played. I mean, they were lowest priced defense on the slate at 2,200 and went out and gave you 12 or 13 DK points. So that was really solid. And Amari Cooper didn't do a whole lot. I mean, really nobody on the Dallas side of the football did a whole lot. And, it was Cole Beasley, who not many people were on. He was 4,700. Not many people played him. And, which I somewhat understand with it being Cole Beasley, but, and then the last game, that was a really weird game. The Taysom Hill went out and, touchdowns and really killed the value of Michael Thomas. And so they got ahead, and they didn't really have to do a whole lot and throw the balls nearly as much as they normally do. And so Michael Thomas did really nothing. And then Alvin Kamara really did nothing. And, on the Falcons side of the football, really it was not till late until they really got something going. But, whether you played Russell Gage or Christian Blake or Calvin Ridley, they all kind of worked out with Jaden Graham as well. So, it was just a weird day, and, the lineup construction was kind of weird too.
Well, yeah, and I think that kind of, pivots us into Sunday here, where, I've seen a lot of people talking about the same plays, talking about the same ways to attack. And so, it's going to be a great week, I think, for tournaments and tournament builds, because, 1 or 2 pivots will lead you, I think, in a good direction to set yourself up to not be sharing first place with people. And it just goes to show, and I wanted to paint that picture from the Thanksgiving slate. It just goes to show you that, these guys who are in premier matchups, like anything can happen. So let's talk about the slate, Kev. And for those of you who may be new, it is week 13, but we still are getting new people in from the Thanksgiving show and from week 12 as well. So for those of you guys who are new and don't know the format that we usually go with, we break this down on DraftKings by position. So we'll be starting off with the quarterback and kind of just moving our way down. And Kev, let's do something for the people. As we've seen the numerous comments over the year, they want to know, where are we planting our flag and what are the premier plays that we're doing? So we'll talk about the overall positions, and then we'll give our top three maybe that we're looking to target at each one of these positions as we go through. Let's start it off with quarterback though, Kev. And we got Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson at the top, who are your only 7K plays. I think both of them make for, great options in tournaments. I would probably lean Pat Mahomes more so in cash. This Oakland defense has given up the fourth most DK points to quarterbacks over the year. We've targeted quarterbacks against them all year. And it's Pat Mahomes. Like, let's not get it twisted. This guy can go out there and post the highest score on the slate anytime he's out there. And we really haven't had a chance to play him all that much, Kev, on the main slate with the injury that he had, and also just KC having primetime games this year. So I love getting to Pat Mahomes in tournaments, especially with him being the highest priced quarterback, and really him and Lamar both have upside. But if I had to go with one, I'd lean Pat Mahomes. I want to just, let's kind of just talk about our favorite plays, Kevin, then we can open up for some of these other guys. So another guy that I like, and you have to scroll down to get to him, is where is he? So Nick Foles. He comes in at 5,700. He's a guy that really hasn't been on a lot of people's radars over the past couple of weeks because he had missed so much time and, really hasn't been talked about a lot amongst the industry. But we have back-to-back weeks here against Indianapolis and Tennessee, two very, slow-paced teams and really prolific defenses, and kind of like containing points scored. And he threw for 48 and 47 times in his first two games back. So I'm looking at this and I'm loving the volume that I'm seeing. And then you're taking into account he's going against Tampa Bay, one of the worst pass funnel defenses there is out there, I guess best, however you want to look at it. And the narrow distribution of targets that you get with Nick Foles, you can pair him up with a DJ Chark, who's really he's priced up, but not to where his production's been. Chris Conley's been a deep target, and Dede Westbrook. They really don't have a tight end to go to. Even Leonard Fournette, if you wanted to get super contrarian, I think by paying, for Nick Foles and maybe Fournette in this game, because I think this Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, I'm not sure what the over-under is at. Kev, you might know better, but this has a chance to be a sneaky shootout, I think, in my eyes, just because of the way that Tampa Bay plays, and with Jameis throwing the ball a lot too, and he could turn it over. I think a lot of good plays can come from this game. And so I really like Nick Foles at this price tag at 5,700. It just feels too cheap. And he really hasn't popped off yet, even though he's kind of flirted with the 300-yard bonus. He had no touchdowns in that Tennessee game, but still got almost 15 DK points. So I really like Nick Foles. I'm not sure. I probably more so for tournaments for me. I do love cash this week, Kev, just because, and we can talk about it at the skill positions, but there's so many just good options that are cheap that you can go to. So I love making cash teams this week to kind of get exposure to some of these guys who are going to be chalk. But Nick Foles in tournaments, I think, is great. And then the other guy that I wanted to touch on as well too was going to be Carson Wentz. So Carson Wentz is just $200 more than Nick Foles, as we were talking about, and he's on the road. But Kev, Miami defense against quarterbacks, we just been targeting them all year, and Carson Wentz really hasn't, given us the production we like seeing. He's really been flirting with this, 12, 13, 14 point range over the past since the Minnesota game, it feels like. But, you're looking at the attempts and they're always going to be there. And you're looking at the way Philadelphia attacks. And plus, with Jordan Howard being out this week, I think a lot of people will try and go to Miles Sanders. And I do like the Miles Sanders play. It just doesn't make me feel comfortable. Jay Ajayi's there and he has been getting work. So I don't think it's a slam dunk play. I'd much rather go the route of Carson Wentz. I think Alshon should be back this week. You can play him naked, almost essentially, or just with one of those guys. Maybe you play him with Ertz if you don't like the tight end position. If you play him with Alshon's really cheap. You don't have to go crazy with Carson Wentz, and I think he can hit in the spot. We just saw Baker Mayfield, who really had been kind of dead to people, take down tournaments last week. I mean, he took down the FanDuel 300K tournament. Somebody had Baker and Jarvis Landry. And then I think in the Millie, or I don't think the Millie was last week, but whatever the high price DK tournament was, Baker was in that winning lineup too. And quarterbacks against Miami all year have been a treat. So I definitely like getting to some Carson Wentz in tournaments with him being on the road, especially, and a lot of people going to Miles Sanders. Kev, what say you at quarterback before we kind of open it up, and maybe there's some other players that we can kind of touch on, but where do you land, and who are the three people you think you'd plant your flag on this week?
So, we talked about this before before we got on, and like I feel like this slate is a pretty fun slate and one I really like. I think but the one thing is there's so many different directions you can go this week. It's not like where it's sort of like filtered down to like one or two like good plays. I feel like there are just so many different directions you can go. Obviously, you can go Patrick Mahomes. He is not arguably, he's in a definitively better spot than what Lamar Jackson is this week. Lamar Jackson is at home. We know what he can do on the ground, so that kind of changes things for him. But the passing, I mean, this is probably the truest test that they're going to have that they've had all year. I mean, San Francisco's defense has been historically good in terms of limiting passing, running, getting pressure on the quarterback. I believe the Ravens lost a couple of their offensive linemen as well this past, last week. So like this is going to be another true test for Lamar Jackson. And I just don't think he has the ceiling this week of Patrick Mahomes. Like Patrick Mahomes can break this slate and go out and put up 40. So yeah, I think if you want to play Patrick Mahomes 7,400, yeah, sure. And then from there, like I think there's some decisions to be made. Like I think Aaron Rodgers, on the road against the Giants have not been good against the pass, and I think this is a game where they're coming off a bye and they really need this game because they got embarrassed the last time they played against the 49ers, and I think that I think what will be a low-owned Aaron Rodgers. I think is a really good who's in a really good spot. I think is an excellent way to go. You want to get leverage off of Pat Mahomes at 6,500. Even like and then going down like Jared Goff at 6K. Like if you look at Jared Goff, Jared Goff has been a train wreck this year, but in his matchups, like his biggest games have all come against. You look at Cincinnati put up 25, Atlanta 25. And then Tampa Bay 27. Other than that, like you look at all of his other games, every decent defense he's played, he's been absolutely anemic. I think this is a week where he can get back right. You look at over the last 3 games that Arizona has played, they've allowed the most passing yards in the league, and it's not even close. They've allowed 360 yards per game over the last 3 weeks. The next closest is Tampa Bay at 320. And so, I mean, even just within points allowed, I mean, they've allowed at least 28 points in each of the last 3 games as well. So, like, I feel like this is a really strong game to target Jared Goff, where I don't think he's going to have the ownership that he probably should in this matchup against the Cardinals. And it is inside the dome and everything else in Arizona. So I really like Jared Goff. I don't say that very often, but this is one of those matchups where I feel like that you can target him and feel pretty comfortable with doing so. The only way I don't think he would get there would be by some measure of like Todd Gurley, having a huge day or something like that on the ground. Other than that, I think Jared Goff's in a fantastic spot. Whether you want to pair him with Cooper Kupp, you want to pair him with Brandon Cooks, who inside the home feels better than when you normally would play him, or Robert Woods. So I just feel like this is a big bounce back spot for them, and so playing Jared Goff at 6K is something I really would like to do. I think there's going to be people that want to play Derek Carr. I wouldn't do it. Not on the coming off a bye on the road in Arrowhead. Derek Carr traditionally struggles against the Chiefs, especially in Arrowhead. He's much better at home than he is in KC. So even though he's 5,500 and they are going to be trailing, I just can't do that. But one of my favorite plays, and as soon as it was announced, it became instantly one of my favorite plays. And I didn't even know how much he cost at the time because I wasn't paying attention to him. But that's Andy Dalton.
Here we go. Yep,
it's Andy Dalton week, boys. And 4,700. He's the second cheapest starting quarterback on this entire slate, right behind Dwayne Haskins. And it's hard not to want to play Andy Dalton. I mean, this is a great matchup against the Jets. They're at home. The Jets are almost elite against the run. I was surprised when I was kind of looking into this. I mean, the Jets are number 2 in run DVOA. Like that was really surprising to me. But if you go back and look at Andy Dalton this year, he wasn't terrible whenever he was playing. Like his last week he played was week 8 against the Rams. He put up 21. Jacksonville, he put up 21. And then against Arizona, he put up 18. I mean, he's put up at least 18 in 5 of the 7 games that he played. Seattle, he's put up 25. San Francisco, which is a defense that we've talked a lot about, how great they are, he put up 22. Some of that was in garbage time, but regardless of that, like Andy Dalton is in a fantastic spot at 4,700. It is the cheapest stack you can probably get to this week, whether you want to pair him with Tyler Boyd or an Auden Tate or even a Tyler Eifert. They all become in play. I don't want to play Joe Mixon. And this is a game that I feel like Cincinnati did this because they want to get a win. They don't want to go 0-16. And so that they inserted him back into the lineup, and this is a matchup they can do that with. And even though that the point totals for this game isn't as high as I thought they would be, now I think some of that was pre Andy Dalton, but knowing that he was going to start is when these lines came out. But I think this has potential to be a shootout here with 2 really bad defenses, and I love Andy Dalton this week. So if you want to pay all the way down and then you kind of pretty much opens everything up, you want to play Christian McCaffrey, you want to play Tyreek Hill, you want to play these guys, you can get them all in your lineup by doing the stack.
Yeah, I like that call, Kev. I think a lot of people will be trying to find ways to get Andy Dalton in their cash lineups, which is definitely a good call. I couldn't believe, like you said, the pricing onto him. He's 4,700. They got Drew Lock, who wasn't. When the slate was live, Drew Lock wasn't ruled the starter just yet, and he's priced $100 above Andy Dalton, which is just hilarious to me. So I think Andy Dalton's definitely in a premier spot. Kev, some other spots that I wanted to talk about before we move on, and these were just ones I'm thinking about here. We got a Kyle Allen at 5,500 going against Washington. Washington's another team that I've looked to attack all season long. And Kyle Allen, he really disappointed a lot of people 2 weeks ago on week 11 when he was the chalk and everybody was talking about how great of a spot he was in against Atlanta. Goes out, throws for 4 interceptions, still somehow found his way to put up 12 DraftKings points by hitting that 300-yard bonus. But then he gets back and goes in New Orleans, puts up 23 DraftKings points with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And just looking at, what New Orleans was able to do to Matt Ryan on Thursday, and then seeing Kyle Allen, in that premier matchup, now getting a home matchup where I think we have Christian McCaffrey, and we'll talk about this at running backs, but he's 10-5 again. And so I think, the smart move, or most people are thinking, okay, how can I jam in these high-priced guys? They're probably looking at McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson or Mahomes or cheap quarterback. And I think this guy can go overlooked. He definitely has some upside here. DJ Moore has been a stud over the past couple of weeks. You compare him with him. You compare him with Christian McCaffrey if you want to. You compare him with a Curtis Samuel who, has one of the highest ADOTs in the league, and a lot of air yards as well too. And then Greg Olsen has kind of been middling the pack of tight end scoring. So Kyle Allen at 5,500, I think I'll definitely have some exposure to him in GPPs, just in the spot that I think will go way overlooked. for him. And then you touched on Derek Carr. I can't go back to him, especially in Arrowhead. We've had so many fights about Derek Carr in the KC matchup, even when the defense was not good on paper, and I refuse to go back to him. But Aaron Rodgers here, 6,500. He'll be on the road against the Giants. I think, we'll talk about it at running back, but I think I like the running backs a little bit more in this game. But Aaron Rodgers always has, slate breaking upside, as we saw when he was at home against Oakland, put up 46. Not saying that this is definitely the matchup that we're going to see, but we saw the Giants, in Chicago, and Trubisky was able, to get over on them. Janoris Jenkins is definitely going to have a tough time with Devontae Adams. The good thing about Aaron Rodgers too is it's kind of like maybe Michael Thomas, or maybe like a Marquise Brown, I guess, or I don't know, maybe not. But I think with Aaron Rodgers, you only have to pair him with that one guy, right? So you play him, maybe you're playing Devontae Adams, and that's it. And then he might throw a touchdown to Valdez-Scantling or Allison or Jimmy Graham or whomever, or Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, but they might not hit their ceilings. So you can play him naked, you can play him with one guy, and I think he makes for an excellent tournament option, especially if the Giants can somehow keep points on the board and force Aaron Rodgers to be throwing in this game. Are there any spots, Kev, that you were looking at, or those two spots that piqued your interest at all before we move on to running back?
No, I mean, I think that, just overall, most of my exposure is going to go towards Andy Dalton, Pat Mahomes. For sure, those are going to be my two highest owned. And then past that, I think there's just some cases to be made just to kind of sprinkling some other guys in, because like I mentioned, or even Jared Goff. But past that, I mean, there's a lot of guys who I do think that are in strong position this week. I mean, we haven't really, Jameis Winston, but it is another way you could go at 6,300 going against Jacksonville, whose Jacksonville defense is just not something that I'm really all that worried about anymore. And no, we'll talk about them because Jacksonville has just become an open gate for running backs. I mean, they've allowed 186 yards per game over the last 4 weeks on the ground, which is atrocious. And, Sam Darnold on the other side of the ball, if you don't play it, at 6,100 against the Bengals, we know how bad the Bengals defense is. There's just a lot of really good spots this week. And I think trying to really tighten it up and tighten up your core is going to end up being key, because, I mean, I think you could, if you really wanted to, like Daniel Jones is another way you could go at 5,600. Now they have Sterling Shepard back. I know that they're not going to have Evan Ingram or Golden Tate this week, but they, getting Shepard back, we're going to be talking about that in the wide receiver position, because him and Darius Slayton are both in pretty solid spots this week against the defense that hasn't really been very good against the pass. I mean, they've allowed the 6th most passing yards over the last 4 weeks at 284, but they haven't really been good against the ground either. So this defense is kind of open season, and they really haven't been getting a ton of pressure on the quarterback, but again, and they're not a team that really turns the ball over a whole lot and everything else. So if you wanted to go like a Daniel Jones, which is completely contrarian, because Daniel Jones will be sub 5% owned at 5,600, so like I said, I mean, for me, if you were to nail me down and say one of my top 3 plays, it's Andy Dalton, Pat Mahomes, and probably flip a coin on Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers, because I think those 4 are really my favorite, my top 4 favorite plays at quarterback.
Yeah. I think for me it's Mahomes and Nick Foles for me are who I'll have a lot of exposure to in early builds as we'll start building, or I'll start building tonight as we're recording on Saturday going into tomorrow morning. Yeah, that's interesting with Jared Goff, Kev. I'll have to look into that, and there's some receivers that I like on that side. So it definitely makes sense to have some exposure to him in GPPs as he won't be on. But yeah, then the third one for me, I think I will try and get some ways to get Carson Wentz exposure and maybe Kyle Allen. And then we have Jameis Winston too, Kev. I mean, shit, like Jameis Winston has not made you feel comfortable at all. But I mean, he's pretty much like locked into the 300-yard bonus on DK. Like he had one game in the past, what is this, 8, that he didn't hit it, and that was against New Orleans, in New Orleans. And the turnovers, yeah, he's got 8 interceptions in the past 3 games, but also 6 touchdowns, hitting that bonus, and still hitting over 20 fantasy points. Like whether they're behind or ahead or what have you, like this guy has been in such a great spot, and I know I'm going to have trouble this week figuring out who I want to play. Is it Mike Evans or is it Chris Godwin week? And by playing Jameis, I think it allows you to talk yourself into getting both, and maybe running it back with either Shark or Fournette in that matchup. So, as we're talking about this and I'm looking at it and we skip over Jameis, it's not a comfortable play. But I think his ownership will be low, and it is a game that I do like targeting. So if I am willing to go Nick Foles route, I think I'll have to consider, looking at that other side and seeing if I can get Jameis in some tournaments.
For sure. I mean, if you look at James, and the other thing to factor in as well is he's starting to pick up yards on the ground as well. I mean, he's 38 week 12, 23 week 11, 40 week 10, 53 week 8 against Tennessee. Like, I mean, that's also another factor in his game that we're starting to see from him, utilizing his legs. But like I said, like it's tough because all the metrics are there for him. I mean, they're number 2 in passing plays per game. He's number 1 in deep ball attempts. So, I mean, they have the all the weapons with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which has been tough trying to prognosticate which one is it this week? Is it, Chris Godwin week? Is it a Mike Evans week? It's always a huge decision because every week it seems that one of them is in the winning lineup because monster game.
Yeah. It's crazy. So I'll definitely have some teams that have both of them on it and probably him with one Jaguar. Because you don't want to miss out on it.
I mean, he's feast and famine at both at the same time because all the interceptions. I mean, he's had like 15 interceptions, I think, over the last 8 games. I mean, but the fact that he's turning the ball over so much is leading to him having to throw the ball so much to get the team back in the game or, turn things around because teams are always getting a hot start on him because he continually turns the ball over. But, in terms of fantasy, like, fine. Like, hey, it's cool, man, because there's no reason to believe whatsoever that they're going to pull him from a game. And so it just leads to more opportunity and leads to more opportunity to score fantasy points. So, I mean, it's tough to get away from Jameis on any single week.
No, definitely. And just last thing, Kev, you're looking at his, home and away splits, a stat that a lot of us in the industry like to look at. And he's throwing for more yards in the home games, but look at his splits with the touchdown interception ratio, 8 touchdowns to 15 interceptions at home, 14 touchdowns to 5 on the road. So I think that's a compelling stat that you could look at, scoring 3 more DK points in away games too. If you do find yourself going to Jameis, you can probably talk yourself into banking on, he has a better production on the road, which is just interesting to see. So let's move on to running back, Kev. This is definitely an interesting week for running back, as none of these even in the middle range, like this just does not feel like a great week for running back. I know this is one of your favorite positions every week to talk about. So, I'll kind of just start it off. For me, Christian McCaffrey at the top, I think is just a solid play. I mean, he's still 10-5 and he's just, Kev, the season he's having is just unbelievable. The usage in the passing game is really what it comes down to. I mean, this guy, you're getting a 10-5 running back who pretty much is like a wide receiver 1 and running back 1 all rolled in. He doesn't need to rush for 100 yards to pay off. You're looking at the touchdown equity that he's getting and the amount of red zone looks that he's getting as well. Just, leading the team right up there with DJ Moore in red zone targets and then red zone carries. Like there's nobody else who's taking that production away from him. And then the targets, you're 9, 15, 7 the past 3 games, hitting 121 yards against Atlanta, 69 yards, nice against New Orleans, and scoring a touchdown. So he's locked in for me. I think, I'm not sure what my exposures will come down to. I always, like to talk into percentages. That I think as of right now, for me, if I'm building my tournament lineups, like I wouldn't feel comfortable having less than 50%. I usually try and go heavier on the field with him. But I'll definitely, try and find some ways without him. But it's just so ugly at the position this week. So the next couple plays, and our boy Corey, in the Slack chat there had hit us up earlier on to talk about some plays that were sub 5K. And there's actually a couple that I like, Kev, and that aren't Miles Sanders. Now, Miles Sanders gets Miami. No Jordan Howard, as we alluded to at the beginning, and should be in a smash spot. But the touches, Kev, you just cannot bank on him. And he does have that kind of big play ability that we've seen over the course of the year. I think he had like a 75-yard catch for a touchdown earlier this year. And then he's had a big run here and there. You really need him to score to, I think, have a tournament winning upside play here. I think if he doesn't find the end zone, I just think the touches aren't there where he gets there. And like we said, Jay Ajayi is still stealing touches from him. So Miles Sanders, he's fine, but he's not a play that I'll be going to. I think for me, it comes down to my favorite is Phillip Lindsay. And Kev, Phillip Lindsay has really taken over this backfield. And you're looking at the touches. He's had 2 really difficult matchups going against Buffalo and Minnesota. And, it hasn't really proven, I guess, that he could really, win you a GPP, but he gets a home matchup now against the Chargers, and the Chargers are always playing from behind. I think, we really don't know what Drew Lock is going to offer, but I think they do try and lean on the run game here to get established against this Chargers defense here. And Phillip Lindsay, without having to worry about Royce Freeman all that much, he does offer, I think, some legit upside. In this matchup earlier this year, he went for 15 carries, 114 yards, and a touchdown for, a couple catches there as well to put up 27 DK points. So he has it well within his ranges to definitely, give you back 4 or 5x on this price tag that just feels way too cheap. In a guy that is going to be used in matchups that are favorable for him. So I really love getting to Phillip Lindsay this week. I'll have a lot of him. I also think that where was I looking at? So Jonathan Williams here for Indy. This is going to be an ugly game. I feel like it's an AFC South matchup. Doesn't really, feel all that great, but you're looking at what Jonathan Williams has been doing the past 2 weeks since he's been filling in for Marlon Mack. And what's not to like there, Kev? I mean, at Houston, he's getting 26 touches or 29 touches, 26 carries, puts up 24 DK points at the $4,200 price tag, 18 points against Jacksonville. Again, another 100 yards. Like, I think, the way that Indy wants to play is they just want to manage the clock and they want to just rely on that defense to kind of, hold the game. And I don't really see, Tennessee going out and really putting the numbers up to force Indy to be throwing in this game. I think it's going to be a really ground game, defensive game. So I really like Jonathan Williams at this price tag, which, it's $1,000 increase on what we've seen from him, but the production is there. And on a slate that I don't really feel comfortable with targeting running backs all that much, I think I'll definitely have a lot of exposure to him. And then in the middle of the range here, I'll go back up to the top. I think my third favorite, and if I'm not getting to Christian McCaffrey with one of these cheaper guys, I'm going to go to Le'Veon Bell. Cincinnati's been a defense that we've targeted running backs against. They're so bad, Kev. I had the numbers up, but they're just bad. And with the production that Le'Veon is seeing here, Oakland, it was a weird game because they got up so early, didn't really need him to do anything. But he was well within his way to having a great game there at 6,400. And he just really hasn't produced in the way that you would think clicking on him at this price tag in a road matchup would be favorable. But the way that they're just so bad against the running back position, receiving and on the ground, it just feels like such a great spot for him. I love him. And, if you're playing Andy Dalton stacks with, Tyler Boyd or Auden Tate or however you choose to go, playing for Le'Veon and thinking that the Jets get up early and can use him. And if Dalton's able to kind of bridge that gap and make it closer, he should be utilized heavily. So Le'Veon Bell is one that I'll definitely get to. He's like the 8th highest priced running back on FanDuel too, which we don't usually always talk about, but it's just goes to show you that like he's very cheap just across the industry, and I think he's in a fine spot. So Kev, with you, who are the running backs that you're looking at targeting early on this week?
Well, again, I think this is an interesting week with the running backs. Like I feel like there's some guys that we can get some, like it's tough. Like, 'cause you look like Saquon Barkley, for example, who's 7,400, the cheapest he's been all year, but he hasn't played very well, over really since. I mean, he hasn't had really a big game since Week 8 against Detroit. But he is still somebody that has that big play potential, and they are at home against Green Bay. So if you look at Green Bay, like Green Bay's allowed the 3rd most DK points to the position over the last 4 weeks. It hasn't really been any better. They've allowed the 9th most rushing yards, over their last 3 games they've played. So I mean, there's just a lot to like about this matchup for Saquon. And without Golden Tate or Evan Ingram, again, I think that, he could be in play at 7,400, considering how cheap he is, because he has, a 40-point upside, but
Right.
super risky because he just hasn't been the same player since coming off injury, despite the great matchup. So I think I'll have some interest in Saquon. Obviously I'm going to try to do whatever I can to get Christian McCaffrey in my lineups. Washington's horrific against the run. It's Christian McCaffrey. The dude's been a beast all year, but but I'm not super high on someone like Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry or Leonard Fournette this week.
No, me neither. Yeah,
in rough matchups, and they're all. I just rather pay down a little bit more for some of these other plays. I think Josh Jacobs is interesting. If the Raiders can keep it close, then I think, he makes for a decent play. But I don't think they're going to be able to keep it close. And on top of that, the Chiefs defense is going to be as healthy as it's been all year, like since week 1, even probably before that, because Frank Clark was dealing with a nerve issue in his neck for most of the season, which is why he really didn't look like Frank Clark. Now, the last couple of weeks, he's really started to turn it on and start to look like the player that they acquired from Seattle, and he's actually healthy now. But they're going to have everybody back. Like Kendall Fuller, who's missed the last 3 or 4 games, is going to be back in the slot. Alex Okafor, who's missed the last couple of weeks, is going to be back. I mean, outside of Emmanuel Ogbah, who's out for the year, they're going to have their entire team. Like this team is. I think that he's the only one of that has played significant time this year that's actually going to be missing from this game. Like they are week 1 healthy, and so coming off a bye, I don't see a scenario where the Raiders keep this game close. I think this could be a bloodbath and a game where the Chiefs whitewash them. So I do think Josh Jacobs is going to be more popular than he should, I guess is what I'm getting at. Now from there, Aaron Jones, again, he has a 40-point ceiling, but he also has a 3-point floor. And so he's tough to play because but he is only 6,800, and that again is relatively too cheap for what his upside is. If you just look at it, 3, 27, 3, 44, 18, 9, 52, 17, 15, 28, and 4. Like it's such a wide range, but I mean, this is the cheapest he's been since week 6 against Detroit when he was 6,700.
Mm-hmm.
But his upside is so massive that, like, if I'm not playing Christian McCaffrey, this is probably where I'm starting. in terms of who I want to play at running back, because I feel like this is a great matchup against the Giants, despite being on the road. We know he's utilized as a pass catcher as well. And so, yeah, I really like Aaron Jones at 6,800. I love that price tag. Todd Gurley is another, 6,500. I think is in a great spot. And then kind of, for me, I kind of dropped down further from that of where I want to start. And I think, having a conversation about Miles Sanders, he is 5,400. I think he's going to be really popular and he's going to carry a lot of ownership. I just don't really know what his ceiling is. Even though at 5,400, it doesn't have to be a ton for him to pay off. But like he's only has one game all year where he scored 20 fantasy points. And that was week 8 against Buffalo. Other than that, like it's been 11, 10, and I don't know how involved Jay Ajayi is going to be in this game. So, like playing Miles Sanders, I feel like, you'd rather play him in a game where it's going to be a little bit more high scoring because of his involvement in the passing game. But I don't know if they're going to have to do that this week. And I can almost see them giving Jay Ajayi more carries than what we think. So I don't know. It'll be interesting with Miles Sanders. I'll have some exposure, but I probably won't be as high as everybody else is. I think where you get interesting, and here's would be playing Ronald Jones at 5,100. I just talked about Jacksonville and how truly anemic they've been against the run. The last 3 games, they've allowed 233 rushing yards a game. Their last 4 games, 183 yards a game. They have been so bad against the run that it's hard not to love, playing Ronald Jones at 5,400, at 5,100. He's gotten better. He's becoming more involved in the offense, and at 5,100, if you look at his numbers, even over the last 4, really over his last 4 games, 16.2, 23.6, 3.4 against New Orleans when they trailed. And then last week against Atlanta, he put up 15.7. He scored a touchdown in 4 of his last 6 games. So it's hard not to want to play Ronald Jones, and especially when I think that guys like Jonathan Williams and Miles Sanders are going to be much more popular. Ronald Jones, right, 100 is a solid play, and I don't think he's going to carry much ownership at all. So past that, LaShawn McCoy is in play at 4,800.
Yeah.
Damian Williams has already been ruled out, so we don't have to worry about that. I do think that we could see a scenario, though, where I would want to have at least some, depending on how much you're playing. Like if you're playing, very minimally, I wouldn't worry about this. But like if you're dropping 150 lineups, I would have some Darrell Williams, who's only 4,400. Because the Chiefs are not going to give LaShawn McCoy 60-70% of the touches. It's just not going to happen. And so I think, especially if they get up quickly, I could see Darrell Williams carving out a decent role here without Damian Williams. He's also, has been utilized as a pass catcher this year some, especially when Damian Williams was out. You go back and look at some of those weeks when he was out, he scored 15.9 against Baltimore, 19.6 against Detroit. So, there's some things to like here with Darrell Williams. So, 4,400 Darrell Williams, who's going to carry no ownership whatsoever, is also, I think, a pretty interesting spot.
Yeah, I don't mind that call, Kev. You're looking back to weeks 3 and 4. Even with only 9-8 carries here, but got some touchdown equity there against Detroit. He was bad against running backs. And then 8 receptions on 9 targets in those 2 games with about 90 yards. Definitely makes for a good DraftKings play when you're talking about cheap value and equity with playing with the best quarterback, in my opinion, on the slate too. You definitely like that there's only 2 running backs to choose from there to rotate in. So I love that. I love that call for tournaments. Kev, there's going to be a lot of talk about Benny Snell coming in at 4,700, just coming off the 21 rush a game, put up 11 DK points. He's not really a pass catching back at all. So, he's kind of, I guess, what I would consider a cheaper Derrick Henry, so to speak, where you're really, the rushing upside is definitely there. But if that's all you're getting from him, even at the $4,700 price tag, like what is going to be his ceiling? Unless Pittsburgh just, runs train on Cleveland here, and what could be argued as, a revenge game narrative, as we just saw what happened the last time these two teams met, with everybody getting suspended and the Myles Garrett situation and what have you. So there are ways that I like to get exposure to this game. I just don't know if Benny Snell is going to be that for me this week, especially on DraftKings, where he's not really catching passes.
It's hard to trust them, right? Because now that you have, you still have Jalen Samuels, you have Kareth White, who all of a sudden started mixing into the backfield mix there. So I don't know if you can trust them. And this would only be a play for me if I was going to play Benny Snell. It would have to be a game where you felt like they could get up and dominate this game. Now, it very well could. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, has had their struggles this year on the offensive side of the football, but they seem to be hitting their stride. And I don't have a whole lot of faith that Duck Hodges can build a lead and do anything here. So I don't think I could trust Benny Snell. It'd be different if he was 3,800, 3,900, 4K, but at 4,700, just pay the extra $100 and play LaShawn McCoy. Pay the extra couple hundred and get up to Phillip Lindsay or Ronald Jones or those guys. I just don't think there's much equity here in Benny Snell, and so I just can't do it. Or even a Darius Geis, who is cheaper than Benny Snell, who's also involved in the passing game. And at 4,500, where we know Carolina has struggled to stop the run all year. So, yeah, I would rather play, all these other guys that ever play Benny Snell.
No, that's fair, Kev. I'll be doing the same. I just don't feel comfortable playing for him in that spot. Go ahead.
The other one, too, that I don't know if we've talked about would be Jamal Williams. He has quietly kind of been, somebody who's been pretty consistent in what he gives you. 15, 6, 16, 18, 13, 26, 1, 10, 13, and 3 for Green Bay. Going against the Giants, he's only 4,500. So if you're not playing Aaron Jones, because I feel like one of these running backs is going to go off. And so, if you want to get contrarian and gain leverage off people who are playing Aaron Jones, $4,500 Jamal Williams in a spot that, is pretty enticing for a value running back, I think is also a really interesting play.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that at all either, Kev. I'm actually playing Jamal Williams in a season long to make the playoffs, and yeah, he the thing about him as well too is, and Aaron Jones has this upside as well. But look at these targets, Kev, that he's seeing. 8 against San Francisco, 6 against the Chargers, 3 KC, 5 against Oakland, 5 against Detroit, 4 against Minnesota. So he definitely has a role in this offense. And, if he's out there in red zone opportunities, we definitely can see Jonathan Williams paying off. Or Jamal Williams paying off. One more, Kev, before we move on to wide receiver. I'm looking at Todd Gurley up here. Just with you liking Jared Goff this week, I just wanted to talk about the other side here with Todd Gurley. So Todd Gurley, we thought we were kind of hitting a stride here against Chicago. 25 touches, goes for 97 yards. Just missed out on the 3-point bonus for DK, but got a touchdown there. Did lose the fumble, but had a couple catches to make up for that. And then against Baltimore, it was just atrocious. So I think we can just basically throw this game out here because they were forced to pass with Baltimore just having their way with this defense. They're going against Arizona here, and they're not gonna have Gerald Everett. The pass game has struggled, so I get what you're saying with Jared Goff in tournaments, but if they get into the red zone, Todd Gurley still has upside. This is an Arizona defense that he really has done well against them in his career. Had 100 yards when he first joined the Rams against them for a touchdown, 74 yards in the next game on 19 touches, or 19 carries, excuse me, but also had a couple of catches as well, had 100 yards in another game with a touchdown. And then last year had that 3 touchdown bonanza there, only rushing for 42 yards, but they blew him out 34-0 and was able to get 3 touchdowns. This is Todd Gurley, right? So like on any given slate, he can always smash. And especially, just playing devil's advocate here with Jared Goff, his home road splits have been something that we talked about. He is on the road. He has been struggling. But if they're going to score points, I have to have some exposure, I think, to Todd Gurley in this range where it just, running back just doesn't feel comfortable this week. But hey, if we can get Todd Gurley in what looks like at least a competitive matchup here, if Kyler Murray's healthy, then Todd Gurley at 6,500 seems like a steal.
I don't disagree. Arizona's been, pretty bad, pretty much against every position. So, that's solid leverage off of that offense. And my only concern with him is are they actually going to utilize him in the passing game? Because they just haven't been willing to do that. So I think that's the downgrade for him at 6,500. But this is a spot where he could easily get on top of that. And, hopefully we see something more, closer to the 26 that he put up against Tampa Bay. But other than that, like it's been pretty bleak for him. He did get 21.3 against Chicago, but he hasn't seen more than 5 targets in a game since week 5. And it's kind of wild to me. Like I think we've talked about it before, but like you feel like it would be much more optimal approach, as explosive as he is, to get him in space as a pass catcher than it is to run him up the gut, 15 times a game. But I don't know. I don't make those decisions, but so that's the downfall for him. And that's the reason that I wouldn't be as high on him as some of these other options, because, like I said, Aaron Jones, I think this has a much higher ceiling. Le'Veon Bell, I think can be made a little bit stronger case, who's a little bit more expensive than him. Or even if you want to, even though it's not as good of a matchup, like even like a Melvin Gordon, who's 6,400. And, we know the opportunities is going to be there and probably be a little bit more involved in the passing game as well. So, I think those are other better options than him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just looking at the stats here. So Arizona, they've been pretty good against the ground, especially at allowing touchdowns. They've only allowed 6 on the year. They give up the 13 most yards on the ground. But when you factor in, if he's able to see some pass catching work here, they've allowed probably like the 8th most catches, 7th most catches to the running back position. They've allowed the 4th most yards to the running back position, and then tied for 3rd most touchdowns with 4. So if Gerald Everett being out makes you think that they're going to utilize maybe Gurley more in the red zone, even though it does shape up well for Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods this week. I love getting to Gurley on some tournament teams. If we can get that like 11 target game that he saw against Tampa Bay, that would just be, that's really what we're looking for. So we just wanted to touch on him before we moved on position, because I think he's a guy, just as you said with Aaron Jones, can really, break the slate if he hits. Let's talk about wide receiver here. As we're getting into the home stretch of the podcast. And we talked before, Kev, before we started, just, what to do with Tyreek Hill. I think that really shapes up the whole slate. And we've talked about, what to do with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But we have Tyreek Hill here at 8,900 on DK. He's the highest priced wide receiver on the slate. And the upside with Tyreek Hill is massive. But, I guess there's a conversation to be had, Kev, with one, is that too lofty of a price for him, which I don't think that it is when you give his upside. 2, can you play him without Pat Mahomes? Because when you talk about playing him with Pat Mahomes, that takes up a majority, a lot of your salary there. I think it's pretty difficult. There are ways to get to him and Christian McCaffrey as well, but I think it's pretty difficult to feel comfortable with all the players in your lineup and trying to jam those guys in. So I think that's where the conversation kind of starts, is how are you treating Tyreek Hill this week in a favorable matchup against Oakland, but with an $8,900 price tag that, really, if he's not, I guess, you need 30 out of him to feel good about it, which, against the Chargers, nothing there. That's the game that I believe he got hurt, right, Kevin, and left. And then Tennessee 36-29 against Minnesota. But, if he goes out and gets you like 14, 16 as he did these couple weeks, it's just not – you're not going to feel good about it. And you've probably played him with Pat Mahomes because I just don't think that people will feel comfortable playing him by himself. So he really shapes the slate, I think, at wide receiver.
So
once you go ahead and touch on it, Kev, before we kind of break it down.
So here's the thing. So here's the thing with Tyreek, and I think this is something that gets lost on a lot of people with him, is that it's probably the more optimal approach to play him by himself than to actually play him with Pat Mahomes, because of the fact that he is somebody that can haul in 2 or 3 long bombs and kind of limit what you're going to get from Pat Mahomes at times, where they score so quickly. And if that happens, you may not see the numbers that you typically would see from Pat Mahomes, where so for me, like I think, with a player that's able to do that, because it's a quick strike offense, and if he hauls in 2 long touchdowns, while yes, Pat Mahomes is getting those numbers, but you're looking for much more. You're looking for much more opportunity than that, and it can limit Pat Mahomes in terms of how often they have to throw the ball because of what Tyreek Hill's able to do with taking the ball off the defense. Like, I would probably rather pair Pat Mahomes with a Travis Kelce than Tyreek. Not that you can't, stack Tyreek Hill and Pat Mahomes. But I think it's a much more optimal approach that if you love Tyreek Hill, you just play him by himself and find a different quarterback to play him with, because. Like I said, it could end up hurting you, because like I said, if he catches, let's say he catches 2 long touchdowns and ends up with 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, but we start to, they get on top, and LeSean McCoy or Darrell Williams, rush for a couple touchdowns. Well, Pat Mahomes' ceiling isn't nearly as high because of it. And so I just think that Tyreek Hill is a better play by himself, because he typically isn't somebody who racks up a ton of receptions. That's just, I know we saw it a couple of weeks ago, but that's usually not the way that he's deployed. It's usually he finds the end zone a couple of times on some long touchdowns, and which, for him is what gives him the crazy ceiling that he has. So I don't know. Like I said, like if you want to play, like I love Tyreek Hill. I think he might be the best spot of any wide receiver on this entire slate. To be honest with you, outside of maybe an argument you could be made with Devontae Adams, who I love at $7K, who is $1,900 cheaper than him. So if you want to get different, like Devontae Adams is probably where I would start. But yeah, with Tyreek, I feel like if I'm playing him, I'd rather play him by himself than play him with Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, I do think that there's a conversation to be had there with that. I mean, Oakland's allowing 39 DK points to the wide receiver position, so definitely can be attacked through the air. But there's 2. I think it was the Houston game. So the Houston game, Mahomes put up 20 DK points, and Tyreek put up 25. So you're looking at, most likely, you definitely want to have Hill there, but you definitely didn't need to have Mahomes, as 20 is, it's a fine score, but it's not like 30 as he put up with Tennessee, where Hill put up 36 and then Mahomes went out and put up 32. Like, that's giving you 60 out of 2 players. That's where, that's when you really need to have them. So if Mahomes is giving us this 440, 450, hell, even 500-yard game, and that can definitely come if he hits Hill for a 75-yarder, Hill for an 80-yarder, or whatever the case may be. That's when you're going to, need to be having both, or be dead in the water if you really don't have both, unless some of these other guys hit their upside. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of starts there with me. I love Tyreek Hill because of his high price tag, because it's probably going to make people uncomfortable. And talk about home road splits. This is a guy where, people love to play Tyreek Hill on the road because his splits are just so favorable there. He's at home now. I could see people just kind of really thinking that that's too high of a price tag. And then let's go down and look at these other guys. So the next 3 guys, who are all fine, hell, even the next 4, you got Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, and Mike Evans. And then remarkably, DJ Moore at 6,800, who's right behind them. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, we've talked about this multiple times, Kev. These guys are slate breakers. These guys have been in the winning tournament lineups. It feels like one of them is in there every week. I think the only week was 2 weeks ago when neither one of them really hit. Yeah, I think maybe that was the Arizona game. Neither one of them really hit. So, but then you're looking at, against Atlanta, Godwin goes for 40. We got Mike Evans here, and then, he's going for 39 against Seattle and 45 against Tennessee, 48 against the Giants. It's really just incredible what these guys have been doing. So, and even further so, I think people will look to go there even more so than Tyreek, which makes Tyreek just a fantastic tournament play. So he's one of my favorites. But then, second, I think 6,900 for Mike Evans when you're saving $800 off of Godwin, who just popped. And it really does feel like people will chase the one who just hit. So Godwin just put up the 40 points. I think Evans is being slept on here with only getting, 9, 10, 12 here. And really having a good favorable matchup here going against Jacksonville. It really screams like a Mike Evans week. I think the defense he's going to be seeing is Trey Herndon, who PFF has graded as one of the bottom tier corners to go out there on this main slate. So with that being said, Mike Evans is probably my second favorite guy for tournaments and my favorite Tampa Bay wide receiver. DJ Chark at 6,600, as I was saying, Kev, he's definitely been his price has been creeping up. But for the past couple of weeks, we've seen him in the $6,000 range, and I guess his floor is maybe these 7 points that we're seeing, get 7 against New Orleans, 7 against Houston, but the upside is incredible. And Nick Foles definitely, seems to, have a relationship with DJ Chark, a rapport with him. 21 targets in his past 2 games. And Tampa Bay against wide receivers, okay, so they're allowing 49 DK points to the wide receiver position. They've allowed the most touchdowns to the wide receiver position. They've allowed the most yards to the wide receiver position, and they've allowed the second most receptions. So it's like, why am I not taking the number 1 wide receiver on Jacksonville against them? I do think there's a case to be made if you want to pay down on a D.D. Westbrook, on a Chris Conley, especially, who has deep playability. I definitely can't fault you for going there. But for me, it's going to be DJ Chark. And then just a couple of these low-tier wide receivers, Kev, that I want to touch on real quick. Robert Woods at 5,500. It seems way too cheap. I know Cooper Kupp's in a premier spot, but you're looking at, we had that weird personal week where he was ruled out of the lineup in week 11, didn't play, but 20 targets in the past 2 games for 13 catches here. We're not going to have Gerald Everett. The price tag is just too cheap for Robert Woods and what his role is in this offense, because they're really, if Kupp is getting covered, he's going to look to Woods next. I feel like Brandon Cooks, with dealing with the concussions and really just hasn't been involved at all this year, outside of one game where I think he went for double-digit DK points. It's been all Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. So I think on teams where I don't have Kupp, I'll definitely find myself getting to Woods here in this matchup. And then the other guy I wanted to touch on was Devontae Parker, Kev, going against Philly. Devontae Parker, with his target share in the past couple of weeks, has, I kind of just want to lock him in. He's my favorite cash game wide receiver. You're looking on the year, only 4 touchdowns, but man, over the past 4 weeks, we got 15 DK points, 11, 23.5 against Buffalo, 15 against Cleveland. This is with only scoring 1 touchdown in that period. So if he gets a touchdown, I think he's definitely well within of hitting, around 15 points, if not 20, in a game here, Miami and Philly, where I think that, points will come from somewhere on both sides. And if Philly goes up, Miami's going to be forced to throw. And anytime you have Fitzpatrick on the other side, I think you can definitely, find somebody who can pay off there. So with that being said, Kev, I'll let you take the floor before we kind of round out this position.
So, like we already talked about Tyreek Hill, I've talked about that. Like Devontae Adams, to me, if you're not playing Tyreek Hill, should be the next guy you get to, in my opinion. I mean, all the numbers are there for him. He missed that time with the injury, but if you look on the slate, I mean, he's on the slate, he's number one in weighted opportunity rating. He's getting 42% of the market share air yards. He's 33% target share. He has been the main man for Aaron Rodgers, and the guy can go off. And like I said, like a 7K, I feel like that's way too cheap for what his upside is in this matchup against the Giants on the road. So, 7K Devontae Adams, I absolutely love. I feel like he should be up there with Chris Godwin in terms of pricing, or even higher than what he is. So if I can get a price break on Devontae Adams, I'm going to take it. And, again, the decision between Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I think, is always a tough one, because both of them obviously are used in different ways, but, it's kind of like a Tyreek Hill kind of situation where Mike Evans tends to be the deep threat, and where it really hurts Chris Godwin in terms of why they don't go off together. Because if Mike Evans hauls in 2 or 3 long touchdowns, which is what we've seen from him mostly this year, then that really limits the opportunity for Chris Godwin. So I'm more on Mike Evans this week, but I always get so nervous about it because I feel like it's like almost like a death sentence on which one you choose, because if you don't have the right one, it's night time, or what it's mostly been this year for it. So, but at 6,900, he's cheaper option, almost $1,000 cheaper. I'd probably go Mike Evans. DJ Moore has been an absolute monster, especially lately, and going against Washington, there's not a cornerback on that team that scares me. So I like DJ Moore at 6,800. If you're wanting to play Green Bay, I mean, DJ Shark at 6,600. Tampa Bay's pass defense has been, whether it's been destroyed by injury or releasing players or not enough talent, like it's been a spot we wanted to target all year among quarterbacks and their pass catchers. So DJ Shark at 6,600 is in an elite spot as well. He's priced up for that. Past that, like, you have to drop down from here, because for me, I think you can play Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry's actually been pretty solid for them. He's somebody that Baker Mayfield is continually look for. I mean, he's seen at least double-digit targets in each of his 3 of his last 4 games. The only one that he didn't was that Pittsburgh game. But that Pittsburgh game, was a little bit different. It was a Thursday night game. They got up quickly on them. He still saw 7 targets. He scored a touchdown. Really, you have to go back to week 8 against New England. The last time he scored a touchdown in 4 straight weeks. So, Jarvis Landry at 6,400. The problem is now that he's kind of getting priced up, where before you were able to get him at a much cheaper price tag. Past this week, he was 4,500, 4,900, 5,700. So, he was much cheaper. Now, like, you're kind of getting up that heavy premium. So, like, I wouldn't be as on him, especially in this game, where I feel like this game could be like a 13-3 type game. Going against Pittsburgh. We know what just happened a couple of weeks ago. There's probably going to be some bad blood. You could see guys get the old toss real quick in this game if anything starts to go sideways after what happened a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, you got Freddie Kitchens stirring the pot last night, or I guess over the weekend, wearing a shirt saying Pittsburgh started or something like that. I'm like,
oh, wow. I did not see that.
Yeah, somebody took a picture with him on their Instagram, I guess, and he's wearing a shirt saying Pittsburgh started it. So, yeah. So that's fun. Anyways, for me, I think once you get past that, because there's so many injuries this week, T.Y. Hilton's out, AJ Green continually be out, Juju Smith-Schuster's ruled out, Golden Tate's out. So, I mean, that kind of takes up, a large chunk of that middle range. But for me, like, once you get down here, like, this is when things start to become pretty interesting. Like I said, Tyler Boyd, I absolutely love, 5,500. I will have a ton of exposure to him. I'm looking probably in the 40% range at least of exposures to him. In this game, I'm going to be stacking him with every one of my Andy Dalton stacks, and I'll probably have some by himself as well. But I really like Tyler Boyd in this matchup. It's hard not to like Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks, who are priced heavily down. 5,500 for Robert Woods. Brandon Cooks is only 5,200. And we know that he can smash that, right? Like, he's due for some positive regression, coming back from injury, everything else. Like, I don't know. It's hard not to love Brandon Cooks in this matchup at 5,200. Like, he can easily get on top of that. Past that, like I think that if you want to play some like Tyrell Williams at 5,400, considering they're probably going to have to be throwing the ball so much, I think you can go there. I don't love it, but it's certainly a spot you could go. Past, a DD Westbrook at 5K again, another great spot. Sterling Shepard is in a fantastic spot at 4,900. We already sort of talked about the with no Golden Tate. I think that opens things up for Sterling Shepard to run more, get more action out of the slot. No Evan Ingram as well. So I think Sterling Shepard, who earlier in the year before he got knocked out with a concussion, was was having himself a pretty solid start to the season, and then he got knocked out. So for me, like I do like Sterling Shepard at 4,900. I like that price tag. Again, if you're wanting to run some Cincinnati stacks, Robbie Anderson, who looked much, much better last week at 4,800, is in a fantastic spot. And then, past that, like, Zach Pascal is another way you could go with T.Y. Hilton still out, 4,700. We saw his price tag rise a little bit too much over the last 3 weeks, where he was 5,600, 5,800, hovering around that range. Like, there was no way I was ever going to play Zach Pascal at that price. But now he's back down to 4,700, where a lot of people aren't going to want to play him because he hasn't really done a whole lot. Since then, I mean, really, he had that big 18.6 game against Pittsburgh, and then 4.6, 3.7, and 0.
Right.
But I think you could play him in a matchup where, if there's some points scored here, I think that gets interesting. And then, of course, Chris Conley, 4,500. Again, great matchup against Tampa Bay. $4,500 Chris Conley is very enticing. If you're wanting to get some leverage plays off of like a Tyreek Hill, for example, McCall Hardman at 4,200, he can easily smash that with his upside. They've continually trying to get him the ball in his hands, but he's much more of a deep threat. He's not going to see a ton of targets, but he did see 4 in his last game. But if they try to, kind of get him the ball, and look for him deep, I think $4,200 McCall Hardman is also pretty interesting. And then 3,800 Auden Tate.
Yes. Yeah, Auden Tate is the guy for me that I want in cash games as well. With Dalton coming back, 3,800 is absolutely ridiculous. Let's just cancel the Pittsburgh game there, as that was just a weird one. But 6 targets, 13 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets, 6, 10. And you have to go all the way back to San Francisco week 2, where he wasn't seeing that share. And now you get 3,800 against the Jets, who, are we afraid of the Jets? Not really. From a passing standpoint, giving up pretty decent numbers as far as receptions go, yards as well. But when you're looking at touchdowns here, and they've given up pretty much tied for the second most with 15, just behind, the likes of Miami and Tampa Bay to wide receivers. So the chances of Auden Tate, really paying off that $3,800 price tag is just bananas. I mean, people were asking in the chat on who to play under 4K to get to Christian McCaffrey builds, and it's Auden Tate. For me, that price tag is absolutely ludicrous. One other, I guess Alex Erickson is there too. I'd much rather play Auden Tate, but sure. If you think that Cincinnati's going to be throwing a lot and can, Joe Mixon's not in play, so you think that Andy Dalton can keep Boyd, Erickson, and Tate all involved, then you can go ahead and go there. Are you interested at all, Kev, in these wide receiver? The only other wide receiver in this range under 4K, as the guys were asking about, I could be talked into Keelan Cole, just because of how favorable a matchup it is, and he's actually seen his snap share increase over the past couple weeks here with Jacksonville. And so, if I'm playing Nick Foles builds and I want to get to, Chark and somebody else, if I need the salary relief, maybe go into Keelan Cole over Conley, even though it doesn't, what am I looking for? The optimal play is to, really target those first 3 guys in Conley, Westbrook, and Chark. But Keelan Cole, I think if he's going to be out there and the snap share is even somewhat remotely viable, then at 3,600, I can see myself getting to him. But I wanted to talk about what I was starting at was, these wide receivers for Green Bay, Kev. So we got Geronimo Allison here at 3,800, and then Alan Lazard at 3,700. Lazard's role has definitely dwindled over the past couple of weeks with these guys being healthy, but it is Green Bay. They're going to run out, 3 wide receiver sets. Hell, they're going to run out 4 wide receiver sets when they can. And if this game with the Giants somehow turns into a shootout, one of these guys could end up being viable. I wouldn't feel confident in trying to play these guys at all as any one-off or anything like that plays. But if you have a stack with the Green Bay side of things, would you feel comfortable at all going with Geronimo Allison or Alan Lazard in this matchup here against the Giants, just of how bad their secondary is?
I think Lazard would probably be the way that I'd want to go. I think he's the more talented wide receiver of the group, and I think that he's somebody that you could trust a little bit more. Last week they kind of just got their heads beat in, so it's hard to really judge. But before that, he was somebody that was being involved a little bit more in the offense. Really had at least 4 targets in every game since week 7 prior to last week. But like I said, they just got smashed. So I do think Alan Lazard would be the way that I'd want to go over that. But, there's some other options here. Now that Pat Mahomes is back and this offense is kind of rolling, Demarcus Robinson at 3,700. Andy Isabella is a complete dart throw, but has been getting more work into the offense over the last at least couple of games that they've played. If you look, he played 25% of the snaps in week 9, 41% of the snaps week 10, and then 30% of the snaps week 11 against San Francisco, running a little bit more routes, 7, 15, and 9. But you kind of see that big play potential with him where he had that, 88-yard touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 78 yards against Tampa Bay. Not fantastic numbers, but I think that he's somebody that could pop off if you're really looking for a cheap option in the 3K range. Again, would be kind of a dart throw. But the other one that I don't think anybody's going to talk about this week that I think that people should be talking about, and that's Zay Jones at 3,600. Hunter Renfrow has already been ruled out in this game. And I think that's going to open up more targets for him, and with what should be a high or a team that's going to have to be playing cash up and throw the ball a ton. Zay Jones at 3,600 without Hunter Renfrow, who was starting to get more and more involved in the offense, is starting to become kind of a key part of that offense. But now without Renfrow, Zay Jones at 3,600, I think is at least interesting, because if you look at, Hunter Renfrow, he had 5, 6, 5, and 7 targets the last 4 weeks. I think that you could easily see, or you could see where Zay Jones could easily get up into that 6, 7 target range. And if he does at 3,600, I think that's at least interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. Didn't even know about the Renfrow injury. So that is crucial news to be discussed here on the DJ Nation pod. Kev, is there anything else that you have at wide receiver before we move to tight end?
No, not really. I think we pretty much hit on all the ones that I would be the most interested in.
Yeah, I guess. If you want to take a shot, maybe on this Delvin Hodges kid in Pittsburgh. Will be out there. There's no Juju. There's no Connor. So if you want to take a shot on James Washington or, Deontay Johnson at their respective prices, I'm not even sure where they are right now. Let me pull it up real quick just to paint the picture. But you got James Washington at 5,000. So Deontay at 4,500. I'd probably go Deontay in that scenario just to save the money. Complete dart throws is you just, never know. And I agree with you, Kev. It should be a fairly ugly game, low scoring game, but those guys are in a position just because of the volume they should be expected to see. Kev, let's move it on to tight end. And as always with tight end, I think this week though, especially we have more playable options that are up at the top where we're used to seeing, 1 or 2 high-priced guys and the rest are cheap. So, Kev, let's real quickly just talk about who our favorite plays are here. For me, I'm looking at Jack Doyle first and foremost. Eric Ebron's been ruled out. There's no T.Y. Hilton. Jacoby Brissett will be out there leaning on the tight end position. Jack Doyle's 3,300. I don't think anything else needs to be said. I mean, he's going to be involved and he's going to have chances and opportunities. He comes in at 3,300, locking him into cash games. I love him in GPPs as well too, because the price tag is just so nice. The other guy I wanted to touch on, Kevin, I know it's not going to be a favorable matchup, but like Mark Andrews at 5,700, I want to give some exposure to Lamar Jackson, and I think the only way I'm going to be able to do that is through Mark Andrews. He's on the field. When he's on the field, he's seeing catches, and I just love this from a tournament perspective because I think most people are going to be looking at how he's disappointed over the past couple of weeks and just paying up to get to George Kittle and Travis Kelce. But then, if Zach Ertz plays, I am going to have some Carson Wentz exposure. So that's going to be my stack that I go with is Carson Wentz and Ertz. Ertz is just so dynamic and dominant in this offense when he's out there. And with the Q tag, it is a hamstring. So definitely something to monitor. But if he's out there, that's where I want to go. Kev, what say you at the tight end position?
Yeah, I think like we kind of already talked about Travis Kelce. If you can figure out a way to get to him at 7,200, I'm all about that. But it is going to be tough to get up to him with some of the plays that we want to get in. But if you can, he is certainly very viable. He has crushed the Raiders in his career, and so if you feel like that, I think he could be solid leverage off of a Tyreek Hill who. I would kind of treat him as throw him into the wide receiver mix if I could, because I just think that there's ways to get him, and he has that 20 to 30 point upside that most tight ends on the slate don't really have. Past that, with Hunter Renfrow out, I do think that may help Darren Waller a little bit more. So 5,500, he really hasn't been that explosive tight end that we saw earlier in the year that was really going off. But I think that this could be a spot for him to kind of bounce back a little bit more and become much more involved. Ryan Griffin at 4,300, the dude continues to play well. He had 10.3 last week. Wasn't really what we were looking for, in terms of overall. But I think, this was a game where they just smashed the Raiders and they didn't really have to throw the ball that much. So he's become one of Sam Darnold's favorite targets. They just extended him to a big contract. So Ryan Griffin is a player that I love. Past that, I think there's two other ones. Well, Jack Doyle is in a fantastic spot. The splits without Eric Ebron is elite. And I think that he is going to be peppered with targets. So 3,300, Jack Doyle is really, really hard to get rid of. But I think he's also going to be really, really popular. The other one is Tyler Higbee. Without Gerald Everett in the lineup, the flow chart has said all year to play tight ends against Arizona, right? It's just been the spot. Now, we don't have Gerald Everett in this offense. $2,500 Tyler Higbee is going to be really, really hard at nut minimum to not play him, and to not have a lot of him, because he could end up, with what I think it's fair to guess that maybe 3 to 4 targets, 30 to 40 yards and a touchdown. He does that at 2,500. You are happy as can be. So at 3,500 in the nut minimum, or 2,500 nut minimum against probably the best matchup on the entire slate for a tight end. Yeah, I don't know how you get away. I don't know how you get away from that.
No, I'm glad you pointed that out, Kev. Definitely missed that, and have been saying that Gerald Everett is out. So he's definitely, the minimum, that's ridiculous. I love him on DK and FanDuel alike. We saw him, saw 6 targets last week. He actually ran 18 routes as well compared to Everett's 9. So, Higbee's definitely in a great spot. He's a cash game lock as well. So let's move on to defense, Kev, and real quick, maybe just talk about, where you're looking to go here. For me, I think it's going to be, I hate that they're at the top, but the Panthers are just such a good defense, so aggressive, can get sacks. Dwayne Haskins has really shown me nothing to trust, and I hate paying up for defense, but the Panthers are just, I just love them so much in this spot that I'm going to try and start there and then see what else I can do. I'd like to go Pittsburgh, but against Cleveland, they're 3,500. I probably just pay up to go against Carolina because Cleveland's come on strong as of recently. The Chiefs decav, we're looking at them at 2,700. The Browns at 26. I mean, these two defenses are well within play, in my opinion. As some of the bottom two on DraftKings. The Chiefs at home, 2,700. It feels too cheap. Derek Carr's been struggling the past couple of weeks. I think they can, get you to 7 or 8 points, and at 2,700, you're feeling good about that. Same with the Browns. I mean, the Browns are on the road. No Myles Garrett, but this is going to be an ugly game, and they put up 16 the last time they faced Pittsburgh. So with the backup quarterback going out there, the Browns are just way too cheap, I think. So if I'm paying down, those are the first two defenses I'm looking at. Kev, what say you?
Yeah, so I completely agree with the Chiefs at 2,700. It's weird to see the Bengals at 2,800 that are more expensive than they are, but in some ways it makes a little bit of sense because the Jets, I think, are I was just looking at. I think they're number 2 in adjusted sack rate. They're number 2. They're allowing sacks for that offensive line. That offensive line is terrible. So I don't think it's a terrible play if you wanted to go Cincinnati here in this matchup, but I'm really starting with, for me, I think the Eagles are definitely in play against Miami. 3,600, that defense is one of the best in the league. And so, yeah, for me, it's the Eagles, it's the Bengals a little bit, but it's definitely the Chiefs. I'm going to have the most exposure to them, especially whenever they have players like McCole Hardman returning kicks who can easily turn it, or who can take a punt to the house call one. If I was going to pay down for that, that super cheap defense just to kind of get something in, I think a few different places, if you wanted to do it, would be like maybe the Giants at 1,900. And then, I think the Cardinals at 23 wouldn't be awful if I was wanting to pay all the way down, or the Redskins at 2,500 is another one. And then, the Browns, I guess, at 2,600 with Pittsburgh, with all the injuries they have. I guess that is one that we should probably, that I should have much higher, because, I mean, when you think about it, with Duck Hodges and his third game that he's going to be playing in, with no Juju, no James Conner, they still have their offensive line, but I believe they're still going to be missing Pouncey. So, and again, I guess it's going to be a revenge spot. They will get Larry Ogunjobi back in this on that defense. So I know there's going to be some pride here for this game, but Browns 2,600 could wreck shop at that price tag.
It's crazy, the price on them comparatively, real quick, to have just a FanDuel. They're the 5th highest price defense on FanDuel at 4,600. The highest price is 5,000. So just to put it in perspective, so definitely feels like a misprice here on DraftKings for the Browns, and I definitely like getting exposure to them. Kev, that's week 13 for the people in a nutshell here. We're almost at the 90-minute mark, so that means it's time to do our week 13 main build here on DraftKings. But guys, always thanks for listening along, and if you like the pod, you like what you're hearing, please rate and review us on iTunes. You can get us on Stitcher. StreamYard's been great to us this year, so we love that we're able to get you the video content here through Periscope, through YouTube, through the channel. So appreciate all the love, guys, and everything. Get into that free Slack chat by DMing the DGen Nation pod, or DMing Kev at Fantasy Rat 13, and we want to get you in that free Slack chat so we can get you guys into the week 13 DraftKings Listener League builds that Kev will be making live. And then also, we're just talking shop going into Sunday's games all tonight and tomorrow as well. So make sure you guys, hit us up if you want to be involved in that. All right, Kev, we got the build. The Millie's back, $20, million to first. We got to start it off. Kev, why don't you go ahead, start us off, and let us know where we are starting with our build for this week 13.
Well, oh man, let's go Andy Dalton, 4,700.
All right, here we go. So if we're playing Andy Dalton there, let's go to Lev Bell and get some exposure there with him at 7,200 to get the exposure there. Because I do like Bell more than the receivers in this matchup, which might.
All right. We're going to get a little weird then. I'm going to play Christian McCaffrey at 10-5.
All right, let's go. So Christian McCaffrey at 10-5, which leaves us 4,600 per player left. We're playing Andy Dalton. We got to get exposure to Auden Tate, so I'm going to throw him in at 3,800 for our first receiver.
All right, and then I want to get some exposure to that Rams game. So let's go ahead. I'm going to play Brandon Cooks at 5,200.
So we got Cooks at 52. I'm going to make it easy on us, and let's just lock in Higbee as well at 2,500, which now opens up 53.66 per player, and we have a wide receiver, flex spot, and defense left. I know Kev's concocting his mastermind build, seeing what we can do with the remaining salary and spots we have left.
I'm gonna see what we can do here. Actually, I think we can get a little aggressive, but I'm gonna lock in at defense to see what we can do on the rest of it. I'll lock in the Browns at 26.
All right, so we got Browns going in at 2,600, which leaves us 67 per position. I mean, we talked about it, Kev, with these wide receivers. I think they're in a good spot. So let's go with Mike Evans, who's the cheaper of the two at 69, and hope that he can be one of the highest scoring players on the slate.
Damn. All right. Well, I wanted to. I didn't know. I was gonna lock in Travis Kelce, but it's cool. We got it.
What's he? Oh, he's 72. 3, so 500, 600.
So I just feel like not having any Chiefs exposure could be a death nail, but.
Well, we have Higbee. We could. Oh, I don't like to go on two tight ends.
I don't mind it on this one. I feel like because I like I said, when I just look at Travis Kelce as a wide. You can look at him as a wide receiver, in my opinion, especially against Oakland at home. But it's fine. We're good.
What happens if we take out Cooks and Higbee, play Kelce? That's 3,500 left per.
You'd have to get real.
Yeah, it's ugly. I mean, even though Kelce is essentially a wide receiver when you factor that in.
Well, why don't we do this? I have no problem with doing it. So let's stay with Higbee. I know we don't love run double tight ends, but like I said, I look at Kelce more like a wide receiver. You run Higbee, and then that leaves you $4,600 for a wide receiver, which I think you feel probably better about. Or, so. And if you wanted to, you can always pivot off that because they both play in the 3:00 slate. So you can always pivot off of Kelce, drop down to another tight end, or move Higbee up into the flex, and then flex or pivot off of that.
No, for sure. So we got 4,600. We got Chris Conley here. We got Hardman. We got Erickson. What are you thinking? Or we pay down on, we could do Arizona D and Sterling Shepard.
Let me see. This is a tough spot. You know what? Let's go Chris Conley.
Chris Conley, I like that. I like that a lot. So for those of you guys who are following along, or in case you weren't, the Week 13 main build is going to be Andy Dalton, Le'Veon Bell, Christian McCaffrey, Auden Tate, Chris Conley, Mike Evans, Tyler Higbee, Travis Kelce, and the Browns D. We have $100 left in salary there, but we'll be monitoring those 3:00 games as both Higbee and Kelce go slate so we can see how our team's looking, figure out what we're going to do. And that, as we submit it in and we're in for the Millie Maker, that is going to do it for the Week 13 main slate. Thank you guys so much for listening along with us here at the DGen Nation. DGen Nation Pod gave you two reasons to be thankful this week, as we had the Thanksgiving slate earlier this week with Derek and Maddie from the TQE. And then main slate here we have as well in hopes that we can take down these GPPs, build on the winnings from Thanksgiving, build on the winnings from all year, build that bankroll up, and hopefully do well in these cash and tournaments lines, as we got a fun and interesting slate that we have here, Kev. But that's going to be it for us here at the DGen Nation Pod. As we said, rate and review the pod if you so please. Subscribe to us on YouTube, get alerts for when we go live on the channel, and then hit up the DGen Nation Pod or Kevin at Fantasy Rat 13 to get into our free Slack chat where we're talking plays every week, every day, every slate. It's been a lot of fun over there at the DGen Nation Slack. So hit us up, and we appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys in the chat, or we'll catch you next week for the Week 14 podcast, as we only got a couple more slates left before we get into the playoffs. But we'll be here all season long, all throughout the playoffs, talking the slates. It's the DGen Nation signing off for Kevin at Fantasy Rat 13 and myself, Ryan Williams at Ryan Alexander _W. It's the DGen Nation. We'll see y'all. Peace.